I had every intention of starting this Doctor Who review just like I started my Wonder Woman review, by suggesting you do a few other things besides watching this show, but since none of you really are, I don't feel the need to do that. It is beyond belief, but what Chris Chibnall decided to do in the first episode since the franchise-crushing Timeless Children is to call back to some of the worst episodes, worst moments in the worst era of Doctor Who. That's right, I've got my bowler hat, my British suspenders, and if you spend a few minutes with me, I'll save you an hour and 11 minutes of your life. Let's do this.
Nerdrotic.com.
You know, the nerd chic thing has been around for a while, and maybe it's had its time. I don't know. I don't care. I have been one my entire life, and I will remain one for the rest of it. But I do remember a time where it wasn't that cool, where you got your ass kicked for wearing a Star Wars shirt, where people clowned you for liking Star Trek. Well, if I was a fan of this show in its current state, I would give myself a wedgie and throw myself into a trash can. Chris Chibnall and the powers that be at the BBC have their heads in the sand, or what I think is far more likely, their heads firmly lodged up their arse. What this episode did was highlight all the weaknesses of the show outside of it being woke and filled with intersectional feminism. And while those elements are in this episode, it is nowhere near the worst offender, but what it does expose is Chris Chibnall's lack of talent. And the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen's inability to play this role. Inexplicably, they decided to focus this episode on shipping Yaz and the Doctor and take their best actor, Bradley Walsh, and put him in the background. And as I stated in my live stream yesterday, I think he was just looking to get out of there, and I think you could see his final paycheck in his back pocket. We do have some overnight ratings from the UK for Revolution of the Daleks, and as expected, it is the lowest rated festive special in the history of the show, breaking the record of Spyfall, the previous lowest rated festive special in the history of the show, which broke the record of Resolution, which was the previous lowest rated festive special. And the common element of all three of those festive specials, well, they're not on Christmas Day, and they all star the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen. 4.69 million viewers. That means Doctor Who has lost 500,000 of them from the previous special during a lockdown. Now, this is an uptick from the disastrous Timeless Children, which removed William Hartnell as the first Doctor. The Doctor is no longer from Gallifrey. The Doctor is no longer a Time Lord. Doctor Who is no longer Doctor Who. We all know the only reason for that slight uptick was the return of Captain Jack Harkness, which ended up doing more damage because, again, it exposed some of the weaknesses of the show, including Jodie Whittaker's, like acting. Not that you need any more evidence that this show should be outright canceled at this point. I'm thinking the BBC does, so I would like to remind them that I went to Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic to see what people thought of this show, and nobody cared. What Zack Snyder and Gina Carano have proven is if you positively interact with your fandom, it can make up for a lot of things. I said this on Friday Night Tights last night. 2021 is going to be the year of the fan. You do not have a 2016 through 2019 brilliant economy to fall back on. You are going to have to earn everything you get, and you can't put in half-ass woke lazy performances, and you can't put in half-ass writing. The worst offense of this episode is when Chris Chibnall in the actual script tries to lecture and patronize fans concerning the Timeless Children plot. The opening scene is strange. They introduce us to a driver who was killed transporting the Dalek, and they never tell you who it is, who killed him, and why. That driver was transporting the empty shell of the reconnaissance Dalek, because this episode is essentially a sequel to Resolution. Exactly what you want to do. Call back to more bad Doctor Who. Then we meet strong female leader, non-threatening person of color, and Chris Noth as Donald Trump. I'm sorry, as Robertson. an unpopular character from arguably the worst episode of the Chris Chibnall and first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker era, which is really saying something. Non-threatening person of color, strong female leader, and Mr. Big work a deal to create security Daleks. Now, there's no real Dalek on the inside. It runs on AI. It can spray some water and some gas, and it's supposed to be the iPhone of security. In the meantime, the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen, is playing to Jodie Whittaker's strengths, moping around in a prison. Remember, this is supposed to be the same Doctor that spent billions of years trying to punch through a mountain of diamond to get back to Gallifrey. Yes, instead of using this opportunity to have the Doctor show a little prowess and break out of her own prison, they end up just using it for Easter eggs with some classic monsters and some modern classic monsters, reminding you of better times. And then, oh man, it takes a man to break the first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker out of her Jadoon prison without any Jadoon. Jack uses a pretty decent magic bullshit device to get them out of there. Then he tells the first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker that he keistered a vortex manipulator, and they get out. And that's it. And the big reunion between Captain Jack Harkness and the Doctor, the one that fans have been waiting for years since he left this show. It should have happened with Matt Smith. It should have happened with Peter Capaldi. It really shouldn't have happened with the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen. Not for John Barrowman's lack of trying. He absolutely destroys the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen. Every time he is on the screen next to her, that's probably why he isn't for most of the episode. The only thing this did was to remind everyone that the magic of this show is long gone and it's been murdered, and we know who the culprit is. Oh yeah, and then there's the companions, Ryan, Graham, and Yaz. While the Doctor has been in the Jadoon prison for decades, the fam has only been without her for 10 months, and Yaz is all broken up about it. And we get this scene from the trailer where she's got all the sticky notes over that extra TARDIS, which could really come in handy and be a great plot point, but don't worry, they completely waste it. Chris Chibnall did, at this point, listen to the fans, the 5 on Tumblr, who are still shipping Yaz and the first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker. The fam somehow gets video of Mr. Big and a Dalek, and they are on the case without the Doctor. In the meantime, strong female leader becomes Prime Minister, and unthreatening person of color discovers some biomatter inside the Dalek casing and creates a Dalek. Mr. Big tells unthreatening person of color to get rid of the Dalek, and as he does, he gets captured by it. Between the beginning of the episode and some point around the middle, a year has passed, and Mr. Big was able to create thousands of these Daleks, and the Dalek riding Rugazi, or whatever his name was able to create more Daleks. The first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, and Captain Jack Harkness are reunited with the fam, and it's another scene that just falls absolutely flat. There's no emotional resonance anywhere, and I laugh even bringing it up related to this show. Captain Jack and Yaz head to Japan to see what's going on in Mr. Big's factory, where they're creating more Daleks. The big scene here is between the two, talking about the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, and how much Yaz missed her in the 10 whole months, not so subtly hinting that Yaz is in love with the Doctor. And this is something that nobody was asking for except for a few little tumble arenas and maybe a few little blue check marks on Twitter, none of which actually watch the show. They watch YouTube clips. They like to talk about it on social media. That's the fandom that you have been going for 5 years, that Marvel Comics has been going for 5 years, that Star Wars and Star Trek has been going for. The fandom that doesn't show up, the fandom that doesn't care. And what does it cost you? The hardcore fans. Jack and Yaz discover Daleks, get attacked by Daleks, defeat Daleks. And this is where we get to the not so subtle message sent to you and I, the folks who have been critical of Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who. It's not unlike what they did when they destroyed the Matrix in The Timeless Children. That was supposed to symbolize destroying the canon of the show.
Things change all the time, and they should, because they have to.
They say things have to change. They say new is scary. No, we are not scared. We are not intimidated by a strong, powerful woman, which Jodie Whittaker does not portray in this show.
New can be a bit scary, right?
You can be very scary. Sheer fucking hubris.
Chris Chibnall from the start had planned to destroy Doctor Who canon by adding an infinite number of Doctors and removing William Hartnell as the first Doctor. The Doctor is no longer a Gallifreyan, like I said before, and the Doctor is no longer a Time Lord, like I said before. Why did he have to do that from the beginning with the first female Doctor? Because he didn't think it would work. They felt like they needed to remake the entire show for it to work, proving that it doesn't. It is the bigotry of low expectations on display. And you changed that because you didn't want the first Doctor to be a white male. You thought of, in the most laziest way, a contrived plot to make the Doctor a little black girl so you can brag about it at your little cocktail parties and, what you probably thought in your delusions of grandeur, win awards. You disrespected the hero of generations. Is this sounding familiar, Star Wars fans? Chris Chibnall, I hope you paid attention to the end of The Mandalorian. People are not tired. People will never tire of traditional heroes. That was the one thing that worked about Doctor Who. What the fans are growing tired of and have been tired of are people like Chris Chibnall and Rian Johnson taking the heroes that we enjoyed for entertainment, for a little escapism, and crapping on them and then demonizing us for calling you out. But it's too late. The damage is done, and you will not have a Luke Skywalker moment in Series 13. I don't know what was in your head when you wrote that scene, but it wasn't to heal the fandom. Most of us took it for what it was, a giant middle finger. I'm not done with that point, and I'll get back to it at the end of the video, but let's finish out this episode. And yes, I'm rushing through it because I just don't care. For the last time, the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, is reunited with John Barrowman, and they spend a minimal amount of time together on screen because it really does show how bad she is. Unthreatening person of color is killed by his host Dalek, and then Daleks start killing everyone. They also kill strong female leader. The first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen, decides to bring Mr. Big along in the TARDIS, and she hatches a plan to call the Death Squad Daleks to kill the other Daleks on Earth because they have human DNA and they are impure. Yes, they have made Daleks with human DNA before in Parting of the Ways, but things have been confusing. So just like with the humans not remembering Daleks, I don't really mind this much. But this is a very Chibnall ending. While we didn't have an arbitrary countdown clock, we had some magical bullshit thing happen in the end to finally solve the problem very quickly and very neatly. The Death Squad Daleks, which are like the SS version of the Daleks, kill most of the impure Daleks off screen, and then Captain Jack, Ryan, and Graham blow up their ship, and the remaining Daleks are tricked into that extra TARDIS that they had just lying around that could have been used for a lot of things in Series 13. The first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, implodes that TARDIS, and they are done. And then we are off to the very long goodbye of Graham and Ryan. This is yet another scene that was supposed to be deeply emotional. Think of all of the goodbyes between the Doctor and all of his companions, and this is by far the worst. The first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, says goodbye to Captain Jack on the radio. He mentions Gwen Cooper. There was a mention of Rose earlier, and it just reminds you of better times. This show is looking dated, and that's the problem with bringing in current year politics. Current year becomes past year, and most of this was made prior to the events of 2020, and it's just looking pathetically sad at this point. We know we are getting Series 13 in a few short months, and they also introduced a very male companion in John Bishop. So I know the Tumblerinas are going to be very disappointed that they're not going to get a penisless TARDIS, but they are most definitely going to get Yaz and the Doctor. This show has hit rock bottom, so much so that Captain Jack Harkness's return didn't even help during a lockdown, and I fully expect this show's ratings to crater in the upcoming season that I will chronicle every single episode of. Now, I think Chris Chibnall is far too arrogant to be embarrassed, but he should be, especially when this episode premiered on the same day Cobra Kai premiered. A week and a half after the return of Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian, the fans lost their minds when Luke Skywalker was just shown a little respect, and Cobra Kai has always respected the past characters, and that's why the show is immensely popular. It's not rocket science. Look at where Doctor Who is. It's not even a split fandom anymore. It's a decimated fandom, and it's all because of Chris Chibnall and the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, and all this episode did was remind us of that.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.
Thanks for listening, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. It really does help independent content creators, and if you could do this with your favorite YouTuber as well, I'm sure they would appreciate it as much as I do.